Terry Lucas, and welcome to the book report. I am so excited today to have a fellow doodler with me. It is Dara Tomasson. Hi, Dara. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm kind of excited. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Doodle School. Can you tell me, first of all, how Doodle School came about, and then how you wrote the book?
Yeah, for sure. So my first book actually with C&T was the 10 steps, the walk, jog, run.
Okay.
And this was actually my first, this is what I would teach women when they first started quilting. And so I taught them the 10 foundational free motion quilting designs, because the problem that I see so many women is we all know how to do things, but we don't realize we know. So when we were young, and remember when we used to talk on the phone with our friends?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we actually had a phone attached to the wall.
Yeah, yeah. And so what did we do? We doodled, or we would be in a boring math class and we would doodle. Like, this was just part of like what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got older, we started to feel afraid of doing daisies or loops or whatever it was. So this was the first book. And the reason I called it Walk, Jog, Run was because we don't run a marathon in like the next day. We have to work our way up to it. So it's just kind of a play on the sewing machine, because we have a walking foot. And so like we have to start somewhere. And so then what I saw was, with this book, it was really helpful for women to start getting that foundational understanding. But I saw that they were getting really focused on being a good student. Like, I need to be the good student, and I have to follow the rules, and I have to do the thing. And so I felt like, their shoulders are already up here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I decided was, I thought, I'm just going to do a doodle approach. So I did it on my Instagram, which has now been deleted for some reason. I had to start over again, but luckily I did it all on YouTube.
Did you get hacked?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just so you know, and just so you sort of feel comforted by this, you are not the only person who's been hacked and had to start over. So folks, go like Dara's Instagram and mine, but go like Dara's Instagram, and I'll put that in the show notes. Because you know what, I'm going to tell you right now, it was about being helpful to somebody when you get it, and it's crazy. So don't fall for that. But also, I understand how hard it is to rebuild.
Yeah. I'm almost at 1,000. So I'm like, good job, Dara. I have more people on my YouTube channel, so basically what I decided to do was, I'm going to go every day in the month of October of 2019, and I'm going to just talk people through a more creative brain. So, and giving them permission. So when I do these big quilting jobs for people, they'd send me their quilt. I really loved having that free reign of being able to take certain elements and then bring them together. And it's all because I've done this kind of work. So take, for example, swirls. So this was day 3. And so basically I give you a prompt and I say, okay, think about, have you ever thought about all the ways that there are to make a swirl? And so I kind of give ideas that certain shapes could turn into swirls. So I give these prompts and I have you think about things in a different way. I was a school teacher for 10 years. I taught mostly grade 5 and 6. And I used to teach art classes, because we were so strapped at our school that we didn't have enough teachers to give all the teachers a break, like for their prep time. So we would teach grade 1 to 6 on a Friday afternoon for 3 hours. And every third week that we would get a prep. But for the 2 weeks, we would be the art teacher teaching from grade 1 to 6. So that was excellent for me in my brain to really start looking at line and shape and design in a different way, because that's a huge range of abilities of kids, right? They're fine motor, all of that.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I saw when I was scrolling through your book, and by scrolling, like, I have it as a PDF. So
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through your book and I'm going, one of the things that I saw is that you take a lot of shapes from nature. So these are things that we know and can touch and
Yes.
run our finger around or run a pen over to get the feel for how a design might stitch out.
Totally, totally. Yeah. So that was that. I mean, because we want everyday things that we're surrounded by. So
Right.
even on this page, like, so I live on Vancouver Island. We have a lot of these fiddleheads and, you know, cupcakes, and we see those beautiful swirls. Like, we have five senses. So this visual sense, and then we can almost even like smell it, right? Like, it's like we're almost like we're having this full body kind of experience. And so it doesn't feel so hard and difficult and challenging, because it's like, oh, this is familiar. This is something I can do. So then the nice thing, so we do the prompt, so your brain is thinking about something, and then we have technical assistance, because I one time I was at a quilt class, and this lady, she was awesome, but she was like putting all these colors together, and I wasn't getting it. I was like, what do you mean? Like low value, you know, all these different things. And I'm like, she's like, no, these ones go together. Those ones don't. And I'm like, but why? Why can you say that? And she's like, just because it that feels right. And I'm like, no, I need more help. I need like structure in my brain so that I can know what the rules are. So that's where this technical assistance comes in.
Okay.
And then we also give, and I'm saying we because actually what happened is I did the YouTube channel. I showed up every day in October 2019. Then I got my book approved at Quilt Market. And then by the time we got to this phase of writing it, it was at the beginning of COVID. I had 5 children who were all now homeschooled, and my business was booming. And I was like, I literally do not have the time to do this. So what I did was I had my friend Amy, and I said, will you watch my YouTube videos and put them in words? And that's what she did. So it was a collaboration. And then so I'm the one who did all the doodles, and I'm the one who made the quilt, finished the quilt, and all of that. But she was able to help do the words because I literally did not have the time.
So as you were working with her, because I'm presuming like you had to meet with her on a regular basis, was she able to kind of tweak things with you so that either they got clarified or made more sense?
Yeah, it was really fun. It really was me just saying, like, you're super awesome and amazing. She took what I had. Like, I didn't actually have to do a lot of that. She pretty much just like went with it. So that was really fun. Yeah. So it was a great collaboration. And then we have some applications. So I broke that down into 3 like very, very like helpful tools, like, oh, that's what's going on in her brain. And then we have some coaching. So even so one of the coaching would be spacing.
Right.
So
Okay, good.
let's be aware of spacing, because really that's so important. So then and then we go to leave. So every is kind of like, you remember on what was it called? What was that show? Three's Company?
Yes.
It's like the same thing. And same with Scooby-Doo. It's like basically the exact same format. They just have variations. And so this book is the same way. It's like it's very predictable. It's very helpful. So that gives you structure to something that feels really random, but it's not so random. Doodling is actually not that random once you have these rules to it and your brain loves it. And then your brain says, okay, we can work within these parameters, and we can start creating our own signature, kind of like handwriting.
Right. Which is one of those reasons why, like, here in the US, we took cursive out of the classroom. However, we really need to bring it back because it does help us access more of that creative part of our brain and help us form, as we're forming our identity, we're forming how we write, which is kin to doodling. And I know when I was in school, I doodled frequently.
Mhm.
in part because it permitted me to focus on what the teacher was saying so that I could absorb what was going on. When you were doing the YouTube and when you were working with Amy Wright, actually doing the writing of the book, was there anything that was surprising to you about how everything came together?
I would think that, well, I guess the surprising part for me is just how much it just multiplied, especially when, I'd done the whole YouTube thing. I quilted, professionally. I quilt professionally. But
Mhm.
then when at the end, when I was doing the final quilt, it was so fun. I was thinking of things like way more things. It was like it just kept multiplying. Like I did an ice cream cone with the swirl that was like so much fun to make. And so I did the doodles for the book, and then I thought, do I have more ideas? And I'm like, yeah. And so it was really fun just to see how unlimited we really can become as we ground ourselves in these like foundational understandings.
Could you do another 31-day challenge?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. Um, when you are looking at a quilt in order to quilt it, what are some things that you're looking for? Like what are the visual cues from the quilt that give you the idea for what you want to do for the quilting?
Yeah, I think one of the big parts for me when I'm approaching a quilt, like I needed to de-stress a couple of days ago. So I went downstairs and I found all these like unfinished quilt tops.
Mhm.
And so the one thing I always ask myself is, what is the purpose of this quilt? And
Right.
that also really helps, because I mean, this is the problem, right? When you're super creative, it's like you get overwhelmed leads to inaction, right? So if
Right.
you're
Yes.
totally overwhelmed, this is like, I can't even start. So I have to give myself the rule of like, what is the purpose of this quilt? Is it for me just to play with? Is
Hmm.
it for me to work on my feather? Like I have a king size feather quilt. Like it's just one big white, it was a sheet actually that I got at a thrift store, and I had a wide back, and I just thought, I'm just going to work on my feather skills. And I used a yellow thread, and this was during COVID actually. And I thought, I'm just going to, every once in a while, I'm going to take a break from my family and my, my life. And I'm just going to work on making beautiful feathers. And so that way, I think it's really important to kind of guide your brain and give yourself some guidelines, or else you just don't start. So that is definitely big, important part of your giving your brain that direction. So
Hmm.
what is the purpose of this quilt? And then the next thing is, looking at the quilt. I love looking at the design of the quilt, the fabric. Is it super fun? Is it spunky? Is it more calm? So what are those, what is the vibe? And then how do I want to complement it? If it's a
Hmm.
lot of straight lines, do I want to have contrast and
Hmm.
do really like flowy, or do I want to stick with the lines and emphasize that design? So those are some really great ideas to ask yourself and kind of give yourself direction.
Hmm.
Because otherwise you could just, quite often I'll just like lay on the floor and look at the quilt and just be like, okay, quilt, tell me, what do you want? That sounds so weird, but it was like, let's like talk about like what, like really sometimes the quilt will tell me too, like what does it need?
Yes, I have totally had that experience where I will just uh another quilter and I call it the stair chair. Like we just
Oh,
sit at, quilt, either quilt hung somewhere, quilt on the floor, and just stare at it. One of the things that I kind of get from the book is that quilting is a conversation,
mhm.
and it's a multifaceted conversation. It's not simply about what's the patchwork look like or what's the pattern that you're doing, but how do all of these elements come together? And so it's almost as though there are multiple languages that we're learning as we're quilting. It's color, it's piecing, it's cutting, it's sewing, it's what's the decorative stitching going to look like? Is it going to, like, as you said, is it going to complement
Yeah.
or is it going to contrast? And if it's going to contrast, like, what elements either am I going to pull, or what colors am I going to pull from the quilt and let it do that?
Yeah, because you even have the fun of like the threads.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, yeah.
yeah, like what the threads am I going to use and how am I going to interact with that? Like it's just such a fun interaction.
Mhm.
I mean, I loved the whole aspect too of like co-creating with other people, like
Right.
them sending the quilts, them and like being able to be an extension of their own creativity. And it was just so fun. Especially a lot of my clients would actually I would never even meet them. They would just mail me their quilts from wherever.
Mhm.
And then it was just this really fun like interaction of, like let's work together. But it just felt so like it feels really fun. And that's the thing with when you learn to doodle and when you learn to build that confidence, then you're taking something that a designer, like fabric that a designer made, or you put these, I love quilting on solids, and taking these beautiful shades and beautiful colors, and then having that fun of, do I, with the thread and the design, and then batting, right?
Mhm.
How much of the batting do I want to double it? What kind of batting do I want to use? All of that. It just adds layer after layer, and you just have
Mhm.
so much more fun, right?
So what is your go-to thread line?
Oh, I love So Fine.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because one of the things I notice about it, it's a 50 weight, so it's a thinner weight. And because I love doing like custom, like really tight designs quite often, then the thread isn't the one that's like yelling as much or talking as much. It's like taking that beautiful texture but it's like this subtle beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's why I like the So Fine. I like it for piecing even. I
Mm-hmm.
like it's strong and I'm looking at my threads over there. I tend to gravitate to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like shiny thread. Like everyone loves what's it called? But I couldn't get into it. I just didn't rock my world.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, that's what I love to go to.
Um, so Superior Threads is one of your favorites.
Totally.
And what do you quilt on?
So I had a Statler,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so funny because um I just didn't want to learn how to use the computer. I thought I did. I liked the idea of it, and
Right.
I have Pantos, I did all that, but it just didn't it just kind of bugged me. And
Mm-hmm.
I fought against it because I was like, no, I can learn this. And I like Gammill dealers, they would like hire me to do shows and things. And they'd be like, oh, let's monetize your designs because they're so beautiful. But I'm like, I don't really want to learn how to do that. Like, I don't really want to spend my time doing that. So I ended up selling my Statler, and now I have a Gammill, I have a Vision 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's just that because I mean, really, I didn't really use the computer anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now as a 12-foot, I used to have a 14-foot, which doesn't really matter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I quilt on. And then I have a Brother 1500, and I quilted for people for a year on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's a great machine, and she still goes strong and fast. You can quilt so much on that machine. So yeah.
Yeah. So you actually speak both quilting languages, both on the home sewing machine and the long arm, which is, I'd say that's a mad skill because a lot of people think that they're so different, and the motion is actually all the same. It's just how you're working in
Yeah,
it.
and I do share that with people when I'm talking to them about, the books and about the design. It's like it kind of like handwriting. I have a chalkboard behind me. Like writing on a chalkboard is a little bit different than writing on paper. It's a little different than writing on, poster paper, but it's not really that different. And it's really not that hard to switch gears.
Mhm.
And so I think that a lot of people have a disservice to themselves when they say, oh, it's so different. Well, yeah, writing on a chalkboard, sometimes on chalkboard, people like start writing like slanted or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you just think, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Okay. And so you kind of get your system and then you start practicing on a chalkboard. It's
Mhm.
not that big of a deal. But if
Now,
you limit yourself, you will.
yeah. Do you, just a doodling question, do you doodle with your dominant and non-dominant hand?
I do tend to doodle just with my dominant hand.
Okay.
I did have flesh eating disease on my right hand.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a crazy thing. I don't know if you can see. Well, you can see the lines here. This is,
oh,
yeah, anyways. And then they had to, yeah, it was a crazy story. At the grocery store, just got a little cut, put my hand on the grocery cart, and there must have been like strep A or strep B. And then I got flesh eating disease. I did not die, which is amazing.
yeah,
But I
clearly
have,
not.
yeah, clearly not. But I have no nerve in this hand.
Okay.
Finger, sorry. And it doesn't quite bend the same way. But this is my dominant hand. So during all of that phase, I did do more with my left hand, obviously, because I had to, because this hand was all wrapped up and doing all sorts of things. But I feel like even if I do that more with the right hand, and it's a little bit impaired now, it's okay. It kind of always just feels like it's frozen, when you're like a dentist. Yeah. But now I'm just used to it. I think it's been, well, my youngest was 2 and now he's 11. So it's been 9 years. So that just shows how amazing we can be at being, like we can grow. What's that word I'm thinking? Like just really, we can be like grow with things. What's the word?
Flexible, bendy.
Yes, bendy. But we can also we can evolve. We can.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, my hand never feels the same. It always pulls. It's always kind of funky, but we can do it. So, yeah, I never do doodle with my left hand though. That's interesting you say that. But when I'm on the long arm, actually quite often on the long arm, I still will be guiding with my right hand, even though it's like a 26-inch throat. And sometimes I'll be having my left hand down. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. In the sewing room, what do you drink?
Okay. I am a huge herbal tea fan. I have baskets of herbal tea, like not kidding. And I have a kettle that's always down here by me. And I always love to drink out of my mason jars.
Oh,
So
there you go.
That I have my routine where I have my, so I definitely do that. I also have a bunch of essential oils. So when it's a little too hot to drink, I have my orange and my mandarin and my grapefruit. I have a bunch of fun essential oils. I have a soda stream, so I will have bubbly water in there. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Snacks?
I'm not a snacker, so I don't really do that. You asked me about music, and so I thought that was really fun. So I go through phases. I went through a Led Zeppelin phase not too long ago, and there's a new version of Stairway to Heaven that was actually his son got it together, and I'm like obsessed with it. So it's like all of Led Zeppelin, they're receiving this award. And there's like a choir that sings with I don't even know the lady's name, but it is so good. And so I really love that. I also I get into these phases of like erasure. Like I go back to my like high school days. So erasure is super fun and bubbly. I also love Yazoo. So there's some really fun ones there. Sometimes I'll just do like some Duran Duran. Like I'll just go back to like this fun 80s, like I love New Order, Pet Shop Boys. sometimes if I'm feeling down, I'll listen to the Smiths. The Cure is also really fun to quilt to. But it's fun. I often will go, so podcasts are also really fun to listen to while I'm quilting. And then I've watched, so I say I watched, but Gilmore Girls, I pretty much listen to Gilmore Girls, the whole thing, because I'm not really watching it because I'm like quilting. But so when I'm really in the zone, I just can't even, like, it'll just be noise to me. I won't even focus. But yeah, I found the podcasts were really helpful, except for when they were really interesting and then I have to stop and I have to take notes. So that's why I tend to do just more music now, because otherwise it's like when I go in the quilting zone, it's like hard to, it's like I am in the flow, right? So I don't, that's why I didn't really like the Statler, because it was so mechanical. It just didn't like get me in that same.
The computerized quilting is a completely different skill set.
And it didn't resound with me. So I was like, I like the idea of it, but also it did actually help me take a break from my body, because doing that intensive, like long, like for custom quilting, that is intense, especially like ruler work and all of that. So I do stagger like a custom and then give myself, but I mean, even just doing like a free motion quilting, like right now, this one I have on my machine right now, it's just like flowy. It's just like really flowy, big. And that's actually really relaxing for my body too. So I don't need that. That's why I'm happy that I got rid of the computer.
How long do you quilt before you take a break? And do you stretch?
So I have, my studio is on, we built a 4-car garage, and we have 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and then my studio is the width of a 2-car garage basically. And so I have staircase and a little deck just off of it. So oftentimes I will just go outside. If it's not raining, I'll just, give my body a really good stretch and just kind of give myself. So I would do I'd listen to Stairway to Heaven or something that's like more calming outside in the sun. Or if it's rainy, I just will like lay on the ground and stretch my body. And so that's what I would do, and just give myself that break. Right now I'm having a little bit of tension problems, so it's not been as much fun, because it's like every 7 minutes the thread breaks. I know. So, and we have some problems with getting Gammill people to come and fix things. So anyway,
things are taking we are still coming out of pandemic. Things are still a little tight. So
so anyway, so I'm like, oh well, I guess it's just a little automatic break.
Yes, it is a little a built-in break. Do you have another book in the works for your quilt making?
I don't. There's definitely thoughts that come to me as I think about that. I do have a course that I taught called Inspired by Nature. It's the next 10 designs that I teach after the 10 basic. And so I have thought about that, and I am going to be at Quilt Market and Quilt Festival. I just booked my ticket last week. So I thought maybe I could do that. Maybe I could, because I am very inspired by nature, and I feel like it is a very natural course for people, because we are drawn to nature. We are part of the earth. And so that could be a possibility, especially because I'm going to be there.
Yep. Make sure you get that appointment with Roxanne.
I know Roxanne and I are good friends.
Yeah. And so are you actually going to do another YouTube challenge?
That's a good idea. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Like right now we're in the summer, and all 5 of my children are home. So my son was gone for 2 years, And then my daughter went away to university. So we've had lots of transitions, and now my daughter's going to leave for a year and a half. She's going to Tahiti, and yeah, which is amazing. And then my son is starting university. So, and I have 3 boys at home. So, and they all play basketball, and they don't just play basketball, they play basketball. Like we're talking big time, lots of hours. And so I've had to be really careful about my time of like how much time I spend doing things, but it is really fun to challenge people, and it is really fun to see people put themselves in that. So I don't know. That might be something I could think about in the future.
Well, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for sharing about your book and how you doodle and your process. And we'll look forward to maybe having you on for an interview about other things.
Yes, for sure. Just one note that so for those people who are nervous about doodling, one of my hacks that helped me so much, that like really got me out of my perfectionism, was, so one day I was at the dollar store, and I bought some vases or something, I can't remember, but she was wrapping it in that paper. And I said, oh, that paper would be perfect, because I was buying like notebooks, but I felt like, I was so nervous about my doodles. I didn't want anyone to see them. Like they just looked so bad. And then I thought, well, that looks like the paper that you use when you move. So I went the next day to U-Haul, and I bought that packing paper.
Right.
So this is like a hack for all of you out there. So what you do is you just go, I have like boxes in my closet. And what I did is I would just take a piece of the U-Haul paper, I would fold it in thirds and then in half. And what that gave you the same size as a clipboard. So when I was watching a movie at night or just sitting, I would then not make myself, but I would say, hey, challenge myself to, let's do hearts. Let's do lines. And I would give myself kind of a cue. And then I would be able to use that paper, and I didn't feel bad about it at all.
Right.
And I didn't feel like it was embarrassing for anyone to see it. We actually heat our house with wood. So like, I'm like, it will just burn. And then the other thing is, don't use pens. I mean, I'm sure, like if you use a really fine tip pen, it causes it's not so flowy. It's not so like, and you kind of tend to write hard. So especially at the beginning, even if you could use like even a fatter tip marker, if you don't get that same precision, but it takes the pressure off. So I definitely feel like one of those fine tip, like the a Sharpie marker. If you're feeling, the more insecure you are, use a fatter tip marker, just because it flows so much easier. But as you get more comfortable, you can go to like a Sharpie, like a fine tip, and then that will help you to get a little bit more precision. But don't use a pen, don't use the colored pens, because even for me now, they hold me back. I don't get that same level of flow. So that might be also really helpful. I have a whole section in my book about pens because I found that really limited people. So that's just like a little fun hack that might help somebody.
I do love that. That's a really lovely hack. That is a really lovely hack. So again, thank you for being with me today. And I look forward to sharing a little bit more about your book, and we'll look forward to having you back. Thanks, Dara.
Thanks, Terry. Bye.
Bye.